HalleluYah Scriptures, Bereshith, Genesis, chapter 39. And Yoseph had been taken down to Mitsrayim, and Potiphar, an officer of Pharaoh, captain of the guard, a Mitsrayim, brought him from the Ishmaelites who had taken him down there. And it came to be that Yahuah was with Yoseph, and he became a prosperous man, and was in the house of his master the Mitsrayim. And his master saw that Yahuah was with him, and that Yahuah made all he did to prosper in his hand. So Yoseph found favor in his eyes and served him, and he appointed him over his house and gave into his hand all that he had. And it came to be from the time that he appointed him over his house and all that he had, that Yahuah barak the Mitsrayim's house for Joseph's sake. And the barakah of Yahuah was on all that he had in the house and in the field. And he left in Joseph's hand all that he had, and he did not know what he had except for the bread which he ate. And Yoseph was handsome in form and handsome appearance. And after these events it came to be that his master's wife lifted up her eyes to Yoseph and said, "Lie with me." But he refused and said to his master's wife, "Look, my master does not know what is with me in this house, for he has given it into my hand all that he has. No one is greater in this house than I, and he has not withheld whatever from me but you, because you are his wife. And how shall I do this great evil and sin against Elohim?" And it came to be, as she spoke to Yoseph day by day, that he did not listen to her, to lie with her, to be with her. And it came to be on a certain day, when Yoseph went into the house to do his work, and none of the men of the house was inside, that she caught him by his garment, saying, "Lie with me." But he left his garment in her hand, and fled, and ran outside. And it came to be, when she saw that he had left his garment in her hand, and fled outside, that she called to the men of her house, and spoke to them, saying, "See, he has brought into us in Hebrew to mock us. He came into me to lie with me, and I cried out with a loud voice." And it came to be, when he heard that I lifted my voice and cried, that he left his garment with me and fled and went outside. And she kept his garment with her until his master came home. And she spoke to him these same words, saying, "That every servant whom you brought to us came into me to mock me. So it came to be, as I lifted my voice and cried out, that he left his garment with me and fled outside." And it came to be, when his master heard the words which his wife spoke to him, saying, "Your servant did to me according to these words," that his displeasure burned. So Joseph's master took him and put him into the prison, a place where the sovereign's prisoners were confined, and he was there in the prison. But Yahuah was with Yoseph and extended kindness to him, and he gave him favor in the eyes of the prison warden. And the prison warden gave into the hand of Yoseph all the prisoners who were in the prison, and whatever was done there was his doing. The prison warden did not look into any point that was under Joseph's hand, because Yahuah was with him, and whatever he did, Yahuah made it prosper. HalleluYah Scriptures, Bereshith, Genesis, chapter 40. And after these events it came to be that the cupbearer and the baker of the sovereign of Mitsrayim sinned against their master, the sovereign of Mitsrayim. And Pharaoh was wroth with his two officers, the chief cupbearer and the chief baker. So he put them in confinement in the house of the captain of the guard, in the prison, the place where Yoseph was a prisoner. And the captain of the guard put Yoseph in charge of them, and he served them. So they were in confinement for some time. Then the cupbearer and the baker of the sovereign of Mitsrayim, who were confined in the prison, dreamed a dream, both of them, each man's dream in one night, and each man's dream with his own interpretation. And Yoseph came in to them in the morning and looked at them and saw that they were sad. And he asked Pharaoh's officers, who were with him in confinement of his master's house, saying, "Why do you look so sad today?" And they said to him, "We each have dreamed a dream, and there is no one to interpret it." And Yoseph said to them, "Do not interpretations belong to Elohim? Relate them to me, please." So the chief cupbearer related his dream to Yoseph and said to him, "See, in my dream a vine was before me, and in the vine were 3 branches, and it was as though it budded. Its blossoms shot forth, and its clusters brought forth ripe grapes. And Pharaoh's cup was in my hand, so I took the grapes and pressed them into Pharaoh's cup and placed the cup in Pharaoh's hand." And Yoseph said to him, "This is the interpretation of it. The 3 branches are 3 days. Yet within 3 days Pharaoh is going to lift up your head and restore you to your place, and you shall put Pharaoh's cup in his hand according to the former ruling, when you were his cupbearer. But remember me when it is well with you, and please show kindness to me, and mention me to Pharaoh, and get me out of this house. For truly I was stolen away from the land of the Ivrim, and also I have done naught, that they should put me into the dungeon. And the chief baker saw that the interpretation was good, and he said to Yoseph, I also was in my dream, and saw 3 white baskets were on my head, and in the uppermost basket all kinds of baked goods for Pharaoh, and the birds ate them out of the basket on my head. And Yoseph answered and said, This is the interpretation of it. The 3 baskets are 3 days, yet within 3 days Pharaoh is going to lift off your head from you and hang you on a tree, and the birds shall eat your flesh from you. And on the 3rd day, Pharaoh's birthday, it came to be that he made a feast for all his servants. And he lifted up the head of the chief cupbearer and of the chief baker among his servants, and he restored the chief cupbearer to his post of cupbearer again. And he placed the cup in Pharaoh's hand, but he hanged the chief baker as Yoseph had interpreted to them. And the chief cupbearer did not remember Yoseph, but forgot him. HalleluYah Scriptures, Bereshith, Genesis, chapter 41. And it came to be at the end of 2 years' time that Pharaoh had a dream, and saw him standing by the river, and saw 7 cows coming up out of the river, fine-looking and fat, and they fed amongst the reeds. Then saw 7 other cows coming up after them out of the river, ugly and lean of flesh, and stood by the other cows on the bank of the river. And the ugly and lean of flesh cows ate up the 7 fine-looking and fat cows. Then Pharaoh awoke. And he slept and dreamed a second time, and saw 7 heads of grain coming up on one stalk, plump and good. And saw 7 lean heads scorched by the east wind coming up after them. And the 7 lean heads swallowed the 7 plump and complete heads. Then Pharaoh woke and saw it was a dream. And it came to be in the morning that his spirit was moved, and he sent and called for all the magicians of Mitsrayim and all its wise men, and Pharaoh related to them his dreams, but there was no one who could interpret them for Pharaoh. Then the chief cupbearer spoke to Pharaoh, saying, I remember my crimes this day, when Pharaoh was wroth with his servants, and put me in confinement in the house of the captain of the guard, both me and the chief baker. Each one of us dreamed a dream in one night, he and I. Each of us dreamed according to the interpretation of his own dream. And there was with us an Ivri youth, a servant of the captain of the guard, and we related to him, and he interpreted our dreams for us. To each man he interpreted according to his own dream. And then it came to be, as he interpreted for us, so it came to be. He restored me to my office, and he hanged him. Then Pharaoh sent and called Yoseph, and they hurriedly brought him out of the dungeon, and he shaved and changed his garments, and came to Pharaoh. And Pharaoh said to Yoseph, I have dreamed a dream, and there is no one to interpret it. Now I myself have heard it said of you that you understand a dream to interpret it. And Yoseph answered Pharaoh, saying, It is not in me. Let Elohim answer Pharaoh with peace. And Pharaoh said to Yoseph, See, in my dream I stood on the bank of the river, and saw 7 cows coming up out of the river, fine-looking and fat, and they fed amongst the reeds. Then saw 7 other cows coming up after them, poor and very ugly and lean of flesh, such ugliness as I have never seen in all the land of Mitsrayim. And the lean of flesh and ugly cows ate up the first 7, the fat cows. Yet when they had eaten them up, no one would have known that they had eaten them, for they were as ugly as at the beginning. Then I awoke. Also I looked in my dream, and saw 7 heads coming up on one stalk, complete and good. Then saw 7 heads, withered, lean, scorched by the east wind, coming up after them. And the lean heads swallowed the 7 good heads. And I spoke to the magicians, but there was no one who could explain it to me. And Yoseph said to Pharaoh, The dream of Pharaoh is one. Elohim has shown Pharaoh what he is about to do. The 7 good cows are 7 years, and the 7 good heads are 7 years. It is one dream. And the 7 lean and ugly cows which came up after them are 7 years, and the 7 empty heads scorched by the east wind are 7 years of scarcity of food. This is the word which I spoke to Pharaoh. Elohim has shown Pharaoh what he is about to do. See, 7 years of great plenty are coming in all the land of Mitsrayim, but after them 7 years of scarcity of food shall arise, and all the plenty be forgotten in the land of Mitsrayim, and the scarcity of food shall destroy the land, and the plenty shall not be remembered in the land because of the scarcity of food following, for it is very severe. And the dream was repeated to Pharaoh twice, because the word is established by Elohim, and Elohim is hastening to do it. And now let Pharaoh look for a discerning and wise man, and appoint him over the land of Mitsrayim. Let Pharaoh do this, and let him appoint overseers over the land, to take up 1/5 of the land of Mitsrayim in the 7 years of plenty. And let them gather all the food of those good years that are coming, and store up grain under the hand of Pharaoh, and let them keep food in the cities. And the food shall be for a store for the land, for the 7 years of scarcity of food which shall be in the land of Mitsrayim, and do not let the land be cut off by the scarcity of food. And the word was good in the eyes of Pharaoh, and in the eyes of all his servants. And Pharaoh said to his servants, Could we find another like him, a man in whom is the Ruah of Elohim? Then Pharaoh said to Yoseph, Since Elohim has shown you all this, there is no one as discerning and wise as you. Be over my house, you yourself, and at your word all my people shall be equipped. Only in the throne I am greater than you. And Pharaoh said to Yoseph, See, I have appointed you over all the land of Mitsrayim. And Pharaoh took his seal ring off his hand and put it on Joseph's hand, and he dressed him in garments of fine linen and put a gold chain around his neck. And he had him ride in the second chariot which he had, and they cried out before him, Bow the knee! And he appointed him over all the land of Mitsrayim. And Pharaoh said to Yoseph, I am Pharaoh, and without you let no man lift his hand or foot in all the land of Mitsrayim. And Pharaoh called Joseph's name Sephnath-paneah. And he gave him as a wife Asenath, the daughter of Potiphera, priest of On. And Yoseph went out over all the land of Mitsrayim. Now Yoseph was 30 years old when he stood before Pharaoh, sovereign of Mitsrayim. And Yoseph went out from the presence of Pharaoh and went throughout all the land of Mitsrayim. And in the 7 years of plenty, the ground brought forth generously. And he gathered all the food of the 7 years which were in the land of Mitsrayim, and laid up the food in the cities. He laid up in every city the food of the fields which surrounded them. Thus Yoseph gathered very much grain, as the sand of the sea, until he ceased counting, for it was without number. And to Yoseph were born 2 sons before the years of scarcity of food came, whom Asenath, the daughter of Potiphera, priest of On, bore to him. And Yoseph called the name of the firstborn Menashe, for Elohim has made me forget all my toil and all my father's house. And the name of the second he called Ephraim, for Elohim has caused me to bear fruit in the land of my affliction. And the 7 years of plenty which were in the land of Mitsrayim came to an end, and the 7 years of scarcity of food began to come, as Yoseph had said. And the scarcity of food was in all lands, but in all the land of Mitsrayim there was bread. But when all the land of Mitsrayim hungered, and the people cried to Pharaoh for bread, Pharaoh said to all the Mitzrites, Go to Yoseph, do whatever he says to you. And the scarcity of food was all over the face of the earth, and Yoseph opened all the storehouses and sold to the Mitzrites. And the scarcity of food was severe in the land of Mitsrayim. And all the earth came to Yoseph in Mitsrayim to buy grain, because the scarcity of food was severe in all the earth.